I'd like to call a meeting of the Bellingham City Council Committee of the Whole to order. We have one item before, well, no, we have a couple items actually. But the first item before us is the adoption of the City of Bellingham's 2015-2016 budget.
Okay, Brian Henshaw, Finance Department. What you have in your packet is the adoption of the biennial budget for 2015-2016. On page 1 of 1 in your packet, it looks like page 40 in the packet, you have the changes from the preliminary budget that the mayor presented on October 6th. So the last 2 months we've had many work sessions and discussions about all of the budget items that were presented. 2 weeks ago, I believe, you met and voted on the amendments to the budget. The 3 amendments that were included from your last meeting were library hours of $44,000, an $80,000 budget expenditures for WAHA, and also the code enforcement officer of $131,000. So all of those were voted and seconded and approved in the budget and are included in the numbers. There's a few items also on that page 40 that were corrections or minor adjustments that have happened since we published the preliminary budget. Most of those were revenue neutral. If we had an expenditure, we would reduce some other expenditure to reconcile the budgets. And then you'll also see down at the bottom of that page the large one for $1 million in the stormwater fund. That was to make sure that by the end of 2016 there's enough reserve requirement to meet the reserve requirements. So we're taking $1 million out of stormwater. Those are the annual type maintenance projects that Ted identified in his budget. So on the next page in your packet, you'll see that we've got the 2015 beginning reserves, the 2015-16 added revenues, the 2015-16 expenditures, and then the ending reserves for each and every fund. And then we highlighted that on your agenda bill packet. Because it's a biennial budget, the city-wide budget for the next 2 years is $495 million. And the general fund portion of that is $142, almost $143 million. So about $71 million in each year. Everything's double for the biennial budget. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to ask or answer those, but otherwise I would ask for approval of the biennial budget.
Yeah. I got one question on process on how to do this. Brian, you're going to love me for this.
Okay.
Because I'm going to bring up one change, and that I have talked with the mayor about prior, so it's not a surprise, and I've talked with some city council members. Should we pass the budget first and then amend, or do the change first and then look at passing the budget if the change goes into effect?
I think the best way to do it is to move adoption of the budget and then move the amendment that you want to propose.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure before we started with that. Michael?
Procedurally, then, let me move. We recommend tonight passing the budget ordinance as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and second before us to pass the budget and recommend that for tonight. All those in favor, answer aye.
Wait, do we want to consider amendments? Do we want to consider amendments on it now?
Before you adopt it.
Oh.
We have to do the amendments now.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Well, I do have an amendment that I want to bring forward. It was an amendment that was included last week, but we didn't end up really voting on it. We voted not to include it with the public safety portion of it, but it's it's for the Downtown Ambassador Pilot Program at a cost of $24,500 a year. I've had a chance to, over the course of the week, to talk to a number of people in the downtown about it, and I thought it was, okay, it's a pilot project, let's be worth giving it a shot. I've talked to the mayor felt it was okay with that, so I would move that we add that to the budget and to take the money out of reserves to cover the cost of this program. Okay, we have a motion and second before us. Comments? Any comments? Any? Yes.
Yes, I wasn't here last Monday, but can somebody, I know I brought up not to fund the commuter trip reduction anymore, and I'm being told that it's state law. If it's state law, why is the county not throwing in any money?
Well, Gene, if I could address why we didn't go on.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
the reason I want to do that, you could take the 25,000 from there to cover
Yeah,
this.
no, I understand that, but we had a good discussion about it
Okay.
last week at the budget meeting. And I think the reason all of us felt we should continue with it is that we may, as a council, we did make a verbal commitment earlier in the year to do that. It had come up before us. We made a verbal commitment that we were going to fund it at $25,000. And so since we did that, we thought, okay, we should honor our verbal commitment and keep that in this year.
Okay.
But
If that's the case, I
following
don't
year,
recall
that's a
that,
difference.
but
Yeah,
that's fine.
that was the reason, because we had
Okay.
made a verbal commitment
Okay.
previous, and we wanted to
Okay, that's fine.
honor that commitment. But we understood exactly
Okay.
where you're coming from and agreed.
Okay.
That should be both. Michael?
Terry, thank you so much for making this. I brought up the idea originally, but it didn't carry it all the way to the end. I'm glad you're doing that for me. I would like to point out two things which maybe the public doesn't know because it weren't at the work session. One is that this will be matched 50-50 with money from the bed tax tourism support. It'll be supporting kind of a
Right.
visitor aspect downtown, and this will be the non-visitor aspect downtown. So it's two things being combined with one person in a shared position that will be contracted for. That's one thing I want to point out. Another thing is that just a matter of experience in Seattle during the budget downturn, they had a downtown ambassador program in like Belltown and Pioneer District and one other place, and they thought they would cut it, and they did, and they brought it back when everyone cried, oh my goodness. As a matter of fact, they increased the size of the program when they bought it back. The businesses in the area understood immediately and were willing to pay for the benefits. So in other communities, these programs have been very successful and very popular and well worth the expenditures. I'm hoping that this program over the next 2 years will see whether it has similar benefits.
Yes, Pinky.
I kind of have mixed feelings because I don't want to take money out of our reserves. However, I actually think this is great for us to do a pilot program in a lot of the cities that I've traveled in, where I've had ambassadors who have helped me through navigating different cities I've ever been in. I think this is a very positive program. The fact that it's going to be housed in the Downtown Bellingham Partnership and that it is having matching funds or things that are convincing me that I am willing to give it a try for these amount of funds and see what awesome things it does for our city. So, yes.
Yeah, and I'm also hoping, this coupled with the downtown partnerships now has a new director who's pretty dynamic, and their downtown plan that's going in, the implementation is starting, and some of the other programs that we're going to be putting in place. We couple these all and working together. Great things for the downtown, maybe. Gene?
Yeah, I have the same reservations that Pinky talked about, but
Yeah.
for a 2-year pilot project, see what happens.
Jack, and then Roxanne.
So Brian, we have a 12% reserve for the general fund
Target, yes.
target at $71 million. That's around, what, about
$8.5 million.
$8.5 million, and we have $13 million is going to be our ending reserve.
Well, that's the estimated ending reserve after the next 2 years of expenditures. So there's a lot of unknowns, obviously, on the forecast side, but also on the expense side. A lot of unsigned contracts, so it's the estimated number, the best number that we have after 2 more years, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, tell your friends and relatives to go out and buy things. Okay, any other? Yes, Roxanne.
Originally, I wasn't supporting this because one side of my brain was really previously worried and still currently worried about creating the most balanced budget possible. However, the other side of my brain has great affection for our downtown and also recognizes all the work that we need to do to really clean up our downtown, get people used to spending time there. And I think we need this middle ground person to help people connect with our business community and help create better safety downtown. So I'm going to support it.
Okay, any other comments? All those in favor of the this budget amendment, answer aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Michael?
So before we go back to the main motion, I want to discuss the budget in general. I think that our budgeting process has some limitations. I've discussed this before. In particular, it's very difficult for council members to find offsetting cuts to make to balance the budget. Right now, we have a deficit budget, which we helped create, and in the next year, in the biennium, there's also a deficit which the administration was unable to close, and they're not comfortable with it either. The mayor isn't happy with it. It's too late now to try to fix that, but I'm hoping to find support early next year to start looking what I think are the structural problems with our general fund. In particular, if you add up the utilities and water and sewer and streets and public safety, kind of the have-tos of city government, that's 87% of our budget, and that leaves just 12 to 13% for everything else that people notice. That's in the general fund, and that's where the deficit spending is occurring, and that's where the strain is greatest. Of that general fund, 1/4 of that is restricted money. It's for housing or greenways. Couldn't be used for these general purposes anyway. And 3/4 of that general fund is for salaries and benefits. It used to be only half, now a little over half. Now it's up to 3/4. And salaries and benefits are the one thing that we're having the hardest time controlling, in particular health care benefits. So there are some structural problems that we're facing, and I would like us to confront that. I don't want to pass another deficit budget, no matter how worthy the cause is. I mean, I share what Gene, what you and Pinky said. We should be having serious qualms about dipping even a teeny sliver more into what Jack points out. There's still healthy reserves, but they're actually not as healthy as they could be. They could be a bigger cushion. There's no downturn on the horizon, knock on wood. But that's how we got through the last recession, is that we had a healthy reserve. And right now our long-term projections are for declining reserves due to, again, long-term structural changes, not due to individual programs that cost $24,000, but due to much larger things. So in the beginning of the year, I probably will try to see what I can do about seeing how we can close those deficit gaps, either with mid-year adjustments. And we may not like them, we may not accept them, but I don't want to give up on having a non-deficit budget. So that is my comment, but I will be supporting the main motion.
Mayor?
Well, I really appreciate the fact that the council has supported the idea of actually implementing the balanced budget amendment that you passed. I mean, it wasn't this year, it wasn't when I was here. I think there was already a policy that you all passed that we weren't achieving, and I think we've done a much better job of going towards that, because everybody is thinking about what does this mean, and is this a priority? I agree with Michael, and obviously I have worked very hard over the last 3 years to get to a biennial budget, which I think is one step in the right direction, and then to look at priorities, because that's how we do this. I want to just caution us on the fact that we have reserves over our 12%. It's very easy to say, but that's money potentially we could spend. The ongoing costs that, I don't believe that ongoing costs, we should use our reserves, because those reserves then when we spend them are gone and the ongoing cost is still there. Certainly if we stabilize our budget and our reserves start going up some, we have a larger opportunity to look at one-time costs, whether it's capital or clean or whatever it is, unfunded liabilities that we could actually look at doing. But I don't feel comfortable that that cushion is big enough or secure enough that we should spend it, and I appreciate the council indicating that they feel the same way about that, because I think it is important that we protect our 12%, because we aren't expecting anything really bad to happen, but we'll be prepared if something does.
And I do have to agree with you, Mayor. The only reason we made it through this last recession as well as we did is councils in the past decided to put a even larger reserve in place and build that reserve. And at that time, we didn't see anything in the near future that was going to affect it. But it was a really good thing that we made those decisions, and when times were good, to build that, because it would have been really tough if we wouldn't have had those reserves. So I wouldn't like to see them go down all that either. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, we have a motion second before us to recommend adoption of the city's 2015-2016 budget with amendment. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 6-0 with Kathy Lehman excused.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank Brian Henshaw especially for the hours and hours and hours he's put in, working with all of us about what we think the budget should look like. So I think we should give him a little round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll make that change and then bring back a revised ordinance for this evening and then third and
Yeah.
final. So.
And I want to thank everyone for the hard work. Yesterday, I was at a function where the governor was at, and I was talking with the governor's wife, and we were saying we're ready to wrap up the budget, and it looks like we're going to make it through. And her comment was, can you come down and help Jay? Because it's looking much tougher down there. So thanks, everyone, for all the hard work on getting to this point. Because, budgets are tough.
Yeah, it's going
Thank
to
you,
be much
staff.
harder for the state than it is for us. And partially it's because you guys, I'm not going to take any credit, I wasn't here the whole time, but have been careful. So thank you.
All goes to Gene. Okay. The next item up is approval of city council minutes, committee minutes, and special meeting minutes. And it looks like we have 4 sets of minutes to approve. Yes, Michael?
I move approval of the committee meeting minutes from November 24th.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval of the minutes of the 24th. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes 6-0. Michael?
Move approval of the special meeting minutes from November 24th.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion before us. Any comments? All those in favor, answer aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
One abstention. I
One
wasn't there.
abstention? Okay. Motion passes 5-0-1. Yes, Michael?
That's passed, right?
Yes.
Okay. For the next one, it's Transportation Benefit District meeting minutes. Can we pass those?
I don't think we do that now. I think we have to do that at a
Yeah.
next transportation benefit district. Yeah.
He knows.
Is that correct, Peter? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Don't you have?
I like being
your
correct.
Your December 1st budget meeting, those minutes have to be.
Yes, we have to.
I'm going to abstain because I was
Okay.
sipping a margarita by a swimming pool.
So do I have a motion on December 1st?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion before us to approve the special budget meeting on December 1st. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Abstention?
Abstention.
Okay, motion passes 4-0-2. Oh, are you sure? Rumors do get started, so. Old and new business. Yes, Roxanne.
Well, this isn't any major initiative on the greater scheme of things, on the grander scale, but something that I'm going to be working with the mayor's office on next year is a campaign to market Bellingham and maybe even Whatcom County as pro-leash communities. Because I continue to receive feedback as the Parks and Recreation Chair, and I experience it when I'm out in the parks, dogs running free, not on leashes, and I become the enemy when I remind them that it's the law to keep your dog on a leash. So this initiative, in my mind, it's just a rough sketch, would include partnership with Humane Society and the great work that they already do to create positive leash awareness, support that in a better way and partnering with our city, and then doing outreach on BTV, maybe gathering volunteers to hand out information to people in the parks during high usage times. But it's something that I'll be working with the mayor's office on next year. And if anybody wants to join in on that, I'd love the support.
Jack?
The Birchwood neighborhood sign that's been long awaited for went up this morning. It's really nice, and it's a very beautiful sign. So.
Where's it at, Jack? Right there on, by the...
Birchwood and Northwest, where the 7-Eleven is.
7-Eleven, okay.
Yep.
And Michael, did you want to bring that up about pulling from the consent agenda?
Thank you, Terry. There is an item on the consent agenda, an ordinance to close the Bellingham Public Development Authority Fund. I think I want to pull that from the consent agenda because that's related to a topic of a hearing we're had tonight, and we don't know what's going to happen. So I just thought we would not have the consent agenda and vote on it separately.
Okay. Yes, Mayor.
Oh, when everybody's done, I have an agenda
Okay.
item. New
Any
business.
problem with that?
We've already voted to defund it, but I guess it
Well,
doesn't matter.
yeah, but this is,
Okay.
we got a public hearing
I know.
on it, and, yeah. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, that we'll pull that for separate discussion tonight. Remind me of it tonight, as I have a short memory sometimes when it gets late. Anything else under old and new business from Mayor?
Well, as you all know, we have been talking to neighbors nonstop for the last couple years or more about quiet zones. And so as a result of some meetings that we've had just recently, I have asked staff to draft a letter requesting the Federal Rail Authority to establish a quiet zone in Bellingham. It's a first official step. We have just been doing what we could do because we already have the funding for 2 quiet zone improvements. We've done the street improvements. We're just waiting for Burlington Northern to say, yes, we're ready to get your check and do the work. But we have a resolution that will be necessary, so you'll need to adopt a resolution. And I can bring these things forward next Monday, on the 15th, if you're interested. We're working hard to get them done. And I actually believe, because we've had a plan for a long time, we have 10 crossings. They're divided in Fairhaven and Waterfront. And so we've been doing all the things that we need to do. We just haven't been doing them officially. So I think that it'll be more clear to the public, and the council will have something to show that says this is what we're actually doing. So I'm excited about it because I feel like it's a more consolidated attempt. And quiet zone issues, just to remind everyone, have been going on for far longer than we've ever been talking about construction at Cherry Point or anything else, and it will continue to be a problem. So this in no way is meant to let Burlington Northern off the hook for anything. So but I think it lets them know that we want to get these approved, and the city has some, whatever the city control the city has, we want to use that, including requesting that the Rail Commission let us do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about this happening and bringing it forward because all of us have been talking about that and assuming we were moving in that direction anyway. Does council want this brought forward next week? Okay, so we don't need a formal motion.
No, this
then.
is just
Okay.
a heads up that this will be coming next week.
Okay, Michael?
Thank you for bringing this up, Mayor. I'm glad to see there is some progress on that. I've been talking with a lot of people about the quiet zones too, and one thing that's good for the public to understand is you can't just do one crossing and call it a quiet zone. Federal regulations are if there's any crossing within a half a mile, well then the other one has to also be quiet, which is why, as the Mayor said, we have a northern segment and a southern segment, and you have to do all of the northern or all of the southern. You can't do half of each of those 2 segments, so it's a bigger project. And you will recall that when we talked about our legislative agenda, this is one of the items I brought up, that it's really important that we include this in our communication with our federal officials because these are federally controlled crossings under federal regulations, and right now local governments are really disadvantaged under those rules, especially when it comes to funding. I know the mayor, shares this opinion. We will need some support from the federal level where these problems are created and where they can potentially be solved. And again, this is not about any particular COGRO. This is a long-going problem, and it needs a federal solution one way or the other. So I hope that in addition to these steps, we talk about conveying that message from the city upward to our federal officials about the nature of our concerns.
Yeah, last year when we met with representatives from other cities from around the country on railroad issues, this topic came up, and it's not just a problem here, and the same things that we have to do are the same things other councils are facing around the country. So it definitely doesn't have to do with the Cherry Point issue of why we have to do this, but this is happening around the country with people trying to get quiet zones, and they're faced with the same obstacles that we're facing. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
and as Terry mentioned, the governor was in town yesterday, and he did mention that about the quiet zones, and there was a discussion about the state requesting, the state actually putting some money in. I always make the plea that, the state of Washington doesn't end in Everett, that there are those quiet zone requirements north, because sometimes people forget about us.
Yeah.
And he knows it's not going to be enough money at the state level. But I am on the rail safety committee for AWFC, and Michael's been in on those phone calls too that we've been having with other mayors and council members. And there's a whole list of things that the governor is going to be proposing to the legislature having to do with rail safety and other things. So I think that would be a good presentation for me to make to the council, and Michael can chime in on things that we've been discussing as AWC and with the governor's office.
That'd be great. Anything else under old and new business? Okay. Although on the agenda it wasn't there, we do have a executive session that has been added. It's going to be potential litigation, approximately 10 minutes. So we will be adjourning this meeting for executive sessions. We will return at approximately 25 after, and I will return. Yes, yes.